Welcome to the Misfit Squad podcast,
where we invite you to embrace your difference and to discover a spectrum of possibilities and change what's wrong about you into what is strong about you.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Misfit Squad podcast. Today we're talking about the proprioceptive sensory system. So we've talked a little bit before about proprioception. So today really is your body aware and the proprioceptive sensory system. So what does proprioception have to do with body awareness? What the heck is proprioception? Et cetera, et cetera. So here's a start for you, and then we'll get into some more details. When you close your eyes, can you feel where your arms and hands are? Are they down by your side, or are they out in front of you? Where are your feet when you're standing? Your internal proprioception sense, so your internal proprioception sense is sharing information to tell you where your body is in space. And so proprioception plays a big part in your ability to perceive and regulate, as well as engage and interact in your surroundings or in your surrounding environment. And adequate proprioception processing is important not only to achieve developmental milestones, but proprioception and touch also assist with the sense of embodiment, so your sense of your body. The ability to have, perceive, and receive sensations, muscle sense, and body awareness are important also for a healthy self-image. So let's just start, Trina, with a specific example. I have a tendency to clip walls with my shoulder. Right? I don't know if that's because I forget that I'm solid and walls are solid and I can't just walk wherever I want, but I suspect that I have my proprioceptive awareness is not totally functioning when I'm doing that.
Yes, it is. So your proprioception is your awareness in space. So yeah, running into walls or running into door frames, some people get, another example is some people get really close to you when they're talking. They're in your personal space.
My number one personal least favorite.
Yeah. And some people are really far away. So it's your awareness of your body in relationship to your surroundings. And that could be somebody else's body. That could be the door frame that you're hitting. Another good example would be, it also pertains to force. So have you ever went to go pick something up and you thought it was really heavy and you used all this pressure to pick it up, and then the thing went flying out of your hand because it was way lighter than you expected? That's also proprioception, because that's your awareness of that object and how much force you need to use to pick it up.
Okay.
Yeah. One more example would be when you're standing barefoot on a sandy beach. What input is your body getting from the sand? Are your feet gripping into the sand to keep you stable, to keep you from sinking? Or are your feet actually sinking deeper into the sand? And then what are your muscles doing? Are your calf muscles and your ankles and stuff, are they tightening up to keep you upright? Mm-hmm. So how you perceive your feet in the sand, and then what your body has to do to correspond to that to keep you in an upright position so you don't fall over. That's another example of it.
So, really, why do we think this is important? Aside.
Well, one big thing is that it has a large influence on your nervous system and how it senses and how it perceives and how it regulates and modulates. So basically, it's important.
So it sounds a little bit like we could kind of think about it as a information receiving system.
Yes.
Right. Is it for some reason what's popping in my head is you know how sonar works, where they'll at least on the submarines, they'll ping out and then the sound waves will like
Yeah.
come back. Like, to me, it seems a little bit like that. It's like our proprioceptive system is like pinging
Yes.
and sending us information. Is that
Yeah.
kind
And that information comes in both active movement, like, moving your arms or running or walking. And it also comes like more in a passive movement, where even if somebody else, like say you were laying on the floor and somebody was stretching you out and somebody else is moving your arm. That's like a passive movement. When someone's moving you, you're still getting a sense. Like if you were, think about that, if you were laying on the floor or getting a massage and you're relaxing and somebody is working on you, you still know for the most part where they're at on your body. That's your proprioceptive system giving you input, and your tactile. But so you get it both ways. There was something I was going to say about that. But you get input from your proprioceptive system, from your muscles and your tendons and your ligaments. And the reason, like we were talking about, that it is important, for one, it helps you regulate your body. Like it helps you like move, play, like explore, because when it's like not functioning properly, like for instance with kids, there's a lot of indicators that we have, but like one simple thing, like if you're trying to get the input, you will exaggerate. So you will see like people, like kids pushing others, or running into others, or like literally throwing themselves into the wall, or jumping excessively on the floor to the point that they could hurt themselves, like really rough play. And for adults, it's really important for you just to be able to interact in your everyday life, like knowing how to engage with other people. And like we were talking about the personal space thing.
So like probably like professional athletes have a very good proprioceptive awareness.
Exactly.
Right. And kids who are on the spectrum, or who, et cetera, probably it's an area where they have challenges, right? Their proprioceptive system isn't at least communicating in a way that they can translate the information, right? That's one of the things, obviously not the only thing that's going on. And so kids who are clumsy, or people who are clumsy for that matter, it can be a proprioception thing. Like, yes. So I find, and there's a difference between just not being aware and having a problem with proprioception, right? Because sometimes I'm doing things occur that look like proprioceptive issues when I'm just sort of not really being really present and aware of what I'm doing with what I'm doing. What, right. Would you agree with that? That there's the right. I want to just people to know that there are things that can look similar but aren't necessarily, so they don't just like, oh, this is that, like.
Right.
Yeah.
You can just be like, sometimes when you get really busy or you're doing multiple things at one time, and then you like, I don't know, knock your cup of water off on your desk and soak all your important documents. That could not just be because of proprioception, of knowing where your body is, but it's also because you're being unaware at that moment in time that, hey, there's a glass of water sitting right here. I need to be aware. So there is a difference, but one thing too that shows up sometimes is when you do, like Kim and I always talk about energy and awareness and being aware. And sometimes when you actually, I want to say, enhance your awareness, or you allow yourself to know what you know, your like space, what we would talk about, or your personal space, your zone gets way, way bigger, and you're aware of so much more. You're aware of so much more stuff, that sometimes that connection with your body changes. And so you will see yourself like tripping yourself when you're walking, or like I'm really good at tripping over cracks in the sidewalk. That kind of stuff, because when you're being more space, sometimes it does feel like you are actually spacey.
Well, yes. And so I notice a lot in horseback, you know, I teach riding lessons. And I notice a lot of, like, for me, it's easy to tell the difference. Especially when I'm like dealing with people who are trying to learn to ride, but they really don't know. Like if I say, rotate your leg this way, put your foot this way, and they literally don't know that they're doing the exact opposite.
Yeah.
The number of times that I will say, put your toes to the sky so that you can put your heel down, and they point their toe to the ground. Like they literally do the opposite. And so, I mean, that's a lack of proprioception. They aren't aware of what their body is doing.
Yeah. Or like even like more adult too, is like if you're working out and you have a personal trainer and they tell you to lift a weight a certain way and you actually do it something different and you think you're doing it the way they're telling you, and you don't get it until that trainer actually takes your hand or arm or leg or whatever you're doing and positions it appropriately and moves you passively through that. And then you're like, oh, that does feel different. That is a different movement. So that's kind of how it shows up, you know. But yes, horseback riding is like huge because it helps so much with the balance and knowing you have to know where your body is in space to stay on the horse. Yeah. A few other indicators of like proprioception. We already talked about bumping into things. You know, you can fall down frequently or easily, like a lot of clumsiness. Another one is like if you see somebody who slumps a lot in their, like I'm like on videos showing you, slumps a lot in their chair, like they have poor posture, or they often will rest their face or their head on their arms, or even if it's down on the desk, they'll put their forehead down. That's because it takes so much effort to keep your body upright. So it's easier to prop it against something.
Oh my God, I do that all the time.
So yeah, you're like always like resting your head or your something.
I have terrible posture.
And we talked about having too much force. So with that, another example would be like you break things really easily. Like even kids who are writing with writing utensils or coloring, and all of a sudden their crown or pencil will break in half. It's because they're pressing so hard. And sometimes it'll be the opposite where you're not pressing hard enough. So you'll have like really light writing, or you're not able to pick the object up. So, or another one in terms of force is like opening and like jars, opening and closing things. You have a really hard time. And that can be a combination of grip strength, but it's really hard. Like even doing Ziploc, you know, little baggies, that can be difficult. What's some other stuff? For kids, you'll see kids enjoy jumping and crashing into things, or they're constantly moving and fidgeting, and you'll also see them chewing on the ends of their pencils, or they want to crunch and chew on gum or crunchy foods. Sometimes kids will also chew on their clothes. They'll like put their clothes in their mouth and chew on it.
It's like you're describing my childhood. I'm not sure how I didn't get put in a funny farm.
But see, this is the thing, is when you're aware of all this stuff and you learn how to accommodate it as an adult, that's what I want parents and people to get, is that there's nothing wrong with you. You have these things, but when you can learn to accommodate and adapt and give the proper input to your body, you can change all of this.
Right, and especially for parents or teachers or caregivers or whatever, recognizing these things allows you to assist them in doing something different without the level of frustration that is usually there. I noticed by observing other people teach, again, for example, how frustrated they get with kids because they think kids are just being like difficult and not listening and whatever. And the children literally cannot move their body the way that they're being asked to if you don't go show them. And there are a lot of people who don't anyway. So I find that for me, like, it allows me to not be frustrated and just walk over and be like, oh, no, see, can you feel this? See, this is how this feels. Let's see how this feels. This is what we'd like to do, you know? And I do a lot of work in touching the, I'm pretending I'm holding their foot, which you can't really see. But, you know, like I will touch the muscles down the back of their calf to their heel, and I will run my hand down from the top of their calf to their heel and just put a little pressure to hold their toe up so that they can feel that stressing sensation, so that they can tune into all of those muscles. And sometimes I'll even like show them, I guess, Trina, you'd probably call this like some of the light pressure that you talk about. Like, but what I'll do is I'll actually like poke the outside thigh muscle and poke inside the knee when they're doing things to get them to like, so I'll go like this up and down their leg so that they'll fire those muscles, so they switch which muscles. It brings the attention to those muscles while they're doing a movement.
Yeah. So that's like one of the things you'll see, well, like stomping or sometimes even pinching. You may see pinching or kicking or biting or headbutting when there's like excessive amounts of issues with proprioception. But doing deep pressure, which that's where we were kind of going, is what Kim was talking about, is when she's like giving them input into those certain muscle joints or the joints and the muscles and the ligaments, so they can start to feel where that, like their knee is in relationship to the horse. So one of the biggest things is we talk about proprioception as deep pressure, and we talk a lot about like heavy work, and that doesn't mean like carrying bricks. I mean, it can, but like putting filling a wagon up with something heavy and you have to pull the wagon, or wearing a heavy backpack with books or something in it, because it allows you to feel where your body is. And the key thing is knowing that when you want to do deep pressure, like, and you are doing that when you're like poking them and giving them that input, because light touch or like tickle and pain are on the same neural pathway in your brain as like deep pressure. So sometimes you'll see kids get really squirmish or really ticklish when you're giving them that. And on another note, this is kind of like a little different, but like, because everybody disciplines in a different way, and a lot of times people use timeout and stuff now, but way back we used to, you know, think about it, spanking was the thing to do, and if you got spanked, blah blah blah. But however, it doesn't work with everybody, because there are some kids who totally crave that deep pressure input. So when you spank them, to them it feels really good, and they're like, oh yeah, I want more of that, and so they'll act out again to get that input, because it's giving them that deep pressure into their joints and their muscles that they're asking for. And that's knowing that pain and that deep pressure and that light ticklish, it's all on that same neural pathway. So it makes it very interesting. That's why you'll see both extremes. You'll see the really sluggish, or you'll see the constant running around. It's all the same thing, but it's two extremes of it. But really, all these things that we're going to talk really briefly go over, these are all, you do the same thing for both extremes to help balance it out. And what we talked about the other week was like getting them to that just right state, or just where you can actually engage in your environment. So
cool.
That's
So
the more technical side.
I think we've been going a while, so why don't we get to those examples?
Yeah, so just a few, we'll just make it short, because there's always a whole lot more, but like a few adaptions that you can do is, I kind of talked about, was doing heavy work, and that's a lot of push and pull activities. Like you can do like tug of war, you can pull a full wagon, wear that backpack. The other things you can do are like, you know, the wheelbarrow, like the wheelbarrow walk, where you hold your feet up and they have to walk
that.
hands. Yeah, and you can also use a wheelbarrow too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
They're both things. And for kids, you can do stuff like animal walks, which is like a bear crawl, doing donkey kicks, crab walk. Those are all giving you deep pressure into your joints, into your shoulders, into your hips, your knees. Another really A great thing is you can even include it into your daily living things, like mopping a floor, vacuuming, taking the wet clothes out of the wash machine, putting it into the dryer. That's heavy. You got to get the input. A lot of other stuff that's used is weighted items, like a weighted blanket, sleeping with a weighted blanket, a weighted vest, sometimes even like ankle weights are used, but those all have to come, you also have to get guidance on that, because I'm not saying go put like a 30-pound blanket on your
What I'm thinking in my head was the sleeping with a weighted blanket, because the weighted blanket I bought is way too heavy for sleeping. It's good sitting in a chair if I'm upright reading a book, but I feel like someone is trying to kill me when I'm lying down under it trying to sleep.
Right. You're not, I think it's like 10% of your body weight. It's not very much.
Well, it is. So I'm putting it out there for the more sensitive people, 10% might be too much.
Right. So you really
don't.
I'm talking like 5 pounds, 10. If you're doing ankle weights, you're usually doing a pound, like light stuff.
But I think I bought like a 12 or 15 pound weighted blanket, and I need like a 6 pound to sleep. For sleeping, I need like a 6 pound weighted blanket. It's too heavy.
Right. And then if you do get something too heavy, for the most part, if you have a little bit of an older kid, I'm talking 6, 7, 8, 9, they won't want it. They'll kick it off. But the other things really quick besides the weighted stuff is also like lycra or spandex, elastin type materials. So you can wear like Under Armour. I'm not promoting them, but like I'm just giving you an example. Uses that deep pressure, like you can wear a shirt or biking shorts because it's really, really tight on your body.
Or like compression socks, like that would,
exactly, that kind of thing. And then a couple other really good things are having like rolling up on like a burrito, like laying on the floor and actually getting into a burrito, being swaddled. Like my sister just had newborns and they're like totally swaddled up and they're like blankets to keep
as opposed to having like 1-year-olds.
Right. But no,
that's why swaddling calms babies down, because it actually provides that deep pressure that they're looking for.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I just thought one thing that seems like would be fun for kids, especially in the current times, kids are still home. So it could be really fun to set up like a sort of obstacle course sort of thing with different stations, with like a bag full of feathers and then a bag with rocks and a bucket with sand, and like where they have to like go through the different stations and experience the different
input. Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. That's dealing with the that's different proprioceptive information, right?
Yeah.
And then on a backpack with bricks or whatever. Books.
Well, and you can also set up like your couch cushions. So, putting them up so that's like a tunnel they have to crawl through, army crawl, get on there, use your arms, that kind of thing. And then also jumping, like putting up a trampoline if you have an indoor trampoline or even an outdoor. Those are all amazing ways, a lot of jumping, bouncing. And even if you can't get all that done, you can do like a lot of chewy, crunchy foods, like foods that they have to actually really crunch because it's giving them input into their mouth, which is why you see adults in the middle of a meeting chewing gum or chewing on their pencils or tapping the desk. Those are all proprioceptive.
Or crunching ice.
Guilty
of that one.
Yeah. So they're even like taking stress balls, like fidgets, like, they have all those little squishy stress balls now. Having one of those available that you can squeeze in your hand. You can do that as an adult or as a kid. Those things all help. Like a lot of times when I'm working, I'll notice I'll take a pen cap or a pen or whatever, and I'm always putting the lid on and off. That's giving me input into my hand, into those like joints. So there's tons and tons of stuff But know there's lots of things that you can do to accommodate and adapt and give your body the input it needs so that it helps you regulate. Because the other part that we didn't really mention, it's also when you like us as adults or as kids, you get like either really hyper, like on the go, like, or extremely sluggish. So either way, when you're like really tired and you can't get anything done, you want to give your body more input, and then it wakes your body up to finish your projects. But also as kids, if they're sluggish, you want to give them input so their motor starts moving. They can start doing something. And also the other way, if you have a kid that's like off the charts running around the room all the time, if you give them the deep pressure input, it calms them down. This is awesome stuff to do before you go to bed at night so your system can calm down and you can rest. So look, we'll do more about it, but we're breaking down each system.
Thank you for listening to the show.
Our target is to make your awareness easy to use and to acknowledge the power of not fitting in.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube and share it with someone you know.
Why fit in when you were born to stand out?
Embrace your difference. Join the Misfit Squad.